This episode of Poetry Snaps is going to sound a little bit different. As part of Auckland Pride, I worked with Dan Goodwin to put together a showcase called Queer Bones Sex Poems. It's exactly what you might expect. We gathered some of the city's best queer poets to talk about queer sex in poetry. The second half of the event showcases their poems. We recorded live in front of an audience at Movespace on Dominion Road. The weather was turning and the traffic was building up, because Ed Sheeran had decided to have a concert that night.
Welcome everyone. Thank you for making it despite the traffic. Welcome to Queer Bone Sex Poems. Give it up for our poets. My name's Sarah, or Sazok, whatever you want to call me. And I am the host of Poetry Snaps, which is a podcast about Auckland or Aotearoa's poetry scene. And so we're going to be recording this tonight, hence why we've got some mics. And we're going to start tonight with a little bit of a panel about queer sex and poetry. And then we will move on. Kia ora, welcome, come on in. And then we are going to move on to a showcase of poetry. Now, we were hoping to wrap this event by 8:30 tonight, but that might go over. Unfortunately, a straight white man has caused a lot of traffic on Dominion Road, so, you know, fuck the straights. Anyway, I'll introduce our poets, and then we will get into the panel. Great. So starting over here, we have Grace Shelley. She is a poet and educator and editor of Overcome magazine, which is a zine that publishes all sorts of queer writing. We actually have a few copies at the front. If you're interested, you can purchase them later in the evening. Next to Grace, we have Quinn. Quinn is a part-time poet, full-time lesbian. And me and Quinn have worked together, written together, performed together on a variety of occasions, and I'm really excited to have them here tonight. Over here we have Joshua Iosefo, who is how would you describe yourself, Joshua? I mean, like, you're so multifaceted. You're a poet, but you're also a playwright and sort of an academic.
I'm just a magician, yeah. Yep. Just shape-shifting, yeah. Just kind of being that little cheeky little thing that kind of, you kind of know what I am, but you don't know what I am, and I like to keep it that way. You know. But anyway, but yeah, that's me.
Thank you. And then over here we have Ngaio Simmons. Ngaio is a poet raised in Hawaii, and Ngāti Porou, I believe. Yep. And she has been performing in Auckland. How long have you been performing in Auckland for? Mike, please.
7 months.
Great, awesome. And she is quite prominent in the Jaffa Slam scene as well. So keep an eye out. And then finally we have Dan Goodwin, my good friend and poet, and 2021's National Slam champ. Okay. Yeah, so the first time I actually ever saw poetry about queer sex performed was when I saw Dan perform. Yeah. And that was at a slam in 2020, I think. And it was the first time that I was like, oh, wow, like, that's allowed. So I guess my first question is to you, Dan. What sort of motivates you to write poetry about queer sex?
Hello. Hi. Come on in. I'm a whole bunch of stuff, I reckon. I never intended to start. I never woke up one day and was like, I want to talk about boning. But I think because I was writing around relationships and mental health and the idea of dating and falling in love around relationships, sex being a really key part of the majority of romantic relationships as well. Yeah, and realizing that, I don't know, I just wanted to write about that aspect, and I'm very much part of a generation that did not have any sex education, didn't have any of those kind of conversations in school, never talked about queer sex, queer sexuality, queer romance was never really a thing until my 20s. So it's like, okay, I want to touch on all of this. Yeah. And now I predominantly make sex jokes for a living, which is great.
Joshua, I heard you nodding and agreeing and eyeing with Dan's answer. Do you have something to add? Do you have something to add to that in terms of like your motivation behind writing poetry about queer sex?
Yeah. Oh. Just in case. Yeah. Oh, I love sex. Yeah. Sex is great. Sex is great, and being queer is fucking great too. Like, but I really resonated with you when you're talking about, I guess, like access to things in regards to like queer romance and seeing that displayed. I think from a queer Pacifico point of view, we don't see that at all. And so I guess I see myself as this kind of storyteller to kind of like tell those stories, and so, and sex is a big part of it, and and I can't wait to spit on it, like, in poetry, yeah. Y'all know,
So I might throw some questions over to the left side of myself. Maybe Quinn. When was the first time you read or heard a queer sex poem? Can you think of a time? Maybe like or maybe one that like stood out to you if you can't remember the first time, because it might not have necessarily hit you like that.
I remember the first time I had sex with a woman. I remember that. About the poetry, I'm not so sure. I think it's back to what Dan and Josh were saying about not seeing it and just not growing up with it and not having the education, not having the words, not having the language or the visibility of it. Is just like, well, I want to talk about what I feel, what I experience, and what other people are probably feeling and experiencing, but is not being shared. So I guess that's, but I don't remember the specific poem. I think the first one that I wrote, I was trying to be clever about using the word assonance and making it about ass, and that was what happened.
I actually want to sort of like expand on that question for you, Grace, because I mean, you have a collection as part of Overcom, which was called Sex Poems. So, I mean, you've read a lot of sex poetry. What do you sort of notice about queer sex poetry? Like, are there any sort of like trends that you notice in them?
One thing about the Overcome collection sex poems is that it's not unfortunately, it is, all of the poems are like deeply metaphorical, and there's no swears in it, there's no like mentions of like cunt or anything, and I was like really ready. Oh, sorry, am I allowed to say that word? Okay, good, because it's in my poem as well. Like I was really ready to read like the most salacious poetry, and then everything that came in was all metaphors. So I did like, I have been thinking about doing another collection of sex poems, and my original idea was to call it Fucking. But then, since then, I shortened the name of the journal from Overcommunicate to Overcom, and now I'm like, well, so it's OVERCOM, so I'm like, well, it would only make sense to have the sex version OVERCUM, so I think that's what's going to happen. But I also wanted to circle back to the question that you just asked of Quinn about the favorite, the first time reading a sex poem, because it reminded me of something about a poem that I'm going to be reading, which is not my own. It's my favorite queer sex poem. But it just then, when Quinn said, you love you remember the first time you had sex with a woman. It reminded me, and I'd completely forgotten, that the first time that I had sex with one of my ex-girlfriends, the morning after, we were like lying in bed and we read each other poetry, and I think that's maybe the gayest thing I've ever done. And I read her like this poem by Adrian Rich that I'm going to be reading later. So, yeah.
That is extremely gay. That is very good. I think it's interesting that because we talked about this on our episode of the podcast as well, a little bit about the sort of metaphors that a lot of queer poets use to talk about sex, and it definitely makes me sort of like wonder how much we are shrouding our sexual experience in some kind of guise to make, I guess, maybe like make it more palatable or make it a little bit less scary for us to talk about it as well. Yeah, I mean, I can't lie that when I write sex poems, it's very much, I mean, like, you're going to be hearing a metaphor tonight, so whatever. But yeah, I think part of it is because it is scary. I'm going to attack you with this question, Ngaio. I've never seen you read sex poetry in front of an audience before. Have you read poetry about sex in front of an audience before tonight?
No. The poem I actually have for tonight is like my first, I would say, pretty successful go at one. I've tried in the past, but yeah, I mean, the shame around that, right? I think sex in general, but especially queer sex, makes that very hard, and you kind of, I never really knew how to go at the topic, and also how to do it in a way that I think was still beautiful to me. And yeah, said what I wanted to say. So it's going to be a lot of firsts tonight for me. And I will also be shrouding it in metaphor, because we're still working through things. But yeah.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all? Aren't we all? We're all in this together. Yeah, 100%. I'm going to throw back to you, Dan. Just because, like, you were my first queer sex poem experience. And I guess there's like the experience of writing queer sex poetry, which can be really daunting, as you were saying, Ngaio, and sort of quite challenging, and makes you think about both your own experience and how you want other people to receive that, so to speak. But what is it like performing poetry about queer sex, Dan? Like, how does that feel in front of an audience, especially when you have to like see the reaction? It's a conversation with the audience, right? So what is that like for you?
Well, it's I remember I started writing about sex and kind of saw that it had a really positive like impact. People seemed to like it, so I was like, cool, we'll do more of this. And then as I did more and more and more, I started to realize that people kind of made a few assumptions. I think about like me as a queer person writing and performing sex poetry, both like the assumption that I had a lot of sex and also that I was really good at it if I was talking about it so much. Neither of which are very true. But like that's the reason why I started writing more about that, because I didn't have a language for it, because I didn't have many experiences of that. And I think poetry and kind of all of its forms in some way is a way of finding language, is a way of finding what's in your head and giving it words when you can't actually give it words, right? Like that's kind of the game of poetry sometimes, to give what can't be written down language, right? And that looks like a whole bunch of different things. But yeah, I don't know, like writing about it kind of gave me a way to explore like a childhood that I never, or like a teenage years that I never had, like adventures that I was hearing peers talking about that I had never seen before, especially as quite like an anxious person in my day-to-day life. And I was like, oh no, this is a world and a reality that I can explore with poetry. And then the more I inhabited the poetry, the more I learned from the poems how to take that into real life. Yeah. It's kind of like tangential thing. My flatmate is in the audience laughing
Look.
because we don't have doors in our flat. And so sound travels, and he knows this journey intimately well. But yeah, I think I'll leave it on that.
Thank you. You're making me blush, Dan. To be clear, I'm that flatmate's partner. Fine. I can't actually remember where I was going with this. Oh yeah. I think something that we were speaking about earlier tonight, just like yarning, is that Pride this year is full of poetry events. Not all of them specifically about sex, but like definitely
Not yet.
yeah, not yet. But I mean, like, you know, I feel like there's something about, I guess, like being able to explore queerness through poetry, through metaphor, through giving it language that I think is very, I guess, freeing for us. And yeah, I wonder, Quinn, if like what your experience has been generally in terms of like being able to explore and express your own queerness and exploring poetry for yourself as well, because you've been writing or performing poetry for the last like 2 years? Year and a half maybe. Yeah. Quite baby poet. I don't know. Yeah. So what's that been like for you? That sort of exploration of queerness and being able to give it language through poetry.
I guess in a word, freeing would be one word. Fun. It's just fun, right? It's fun to do salacious poetry and talk about ass and tits and pussy and use all those words in a poem and watch people's faces change, whether they laugh or are shocked or whatever. I think my queer journey is I mean, it's never ending, right? And I think I'm coming from America and living in New Zealand, there are adaptations that you have to make, right? And the culture is different here, and which means the poetry is different here because the people are different here, and the ideas and the feelings are different here. And so I think sometimes I feel probably like a lot of immigrants feel, which is to feel kind of out of place in some scenarios or some spaces. But just, I guess, remembering that like every single person is an individual, and like my experiences are my own, and so kind of just being like, all right, well, I'll just go be me because that's all I've got anyways. So whatever that is, whatever that looks like, hopefully people like it. And but yeah, I think so Grace and I here, we were in the gay choir together, and Grace still is in the choir. But I think when I first joined, my style was super different, like, because I had just come out and I was wearing button-ups and I like got the undercut done, and you know what I mean. And so, and it's like, and I recently bought Crocs, and I'm so influenced by New Zealand and just the different things and the queers here. And I had the wolf cut before and the mullet, and you know what I mean. Like, so it's yeah, experimental, freeing, experimental. I think it's just fun to try new things and remember to be yourself, but that yourself can change. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. One of the things that you talked about was sort of cultural differences, and Josh, you sort of touched on that earlier in terms of like coming at things from a Pacifica angle because you are a Pacifica poet, you're a Pacifica performer. I guess something that I'm interested in from you is how your poetry and being able to express yourself, especially about queer sex, changes depending on the audience that you're in front of as well. Yeah, like how that feels for you in different spaces.
Yo, yeah. Such a good question. Such a good question. Because I think, yeah, it's almost like to be brown is one thing. To be brown and queer is a whole different thing. And the code switching and the exhaustion with that, it can be quite a lot. But I think because like you're also navigating like VAR and space, relational space in between you and your elders and you and your peers, and there's that still exists within the context of queerness too. Even today, like I was like, okay, I'm mindful I'm wearing a skirt, but I bought an ear lover to cover myself when I say my poetry, but that's not denying myself, that's just being respectful to my culture. So it's all of these nuances that you're just navigating kind of in here. But I think in terms of myself, I'm very much unapologetically myself. But and I know who I am, and so that doesn't change in terms of my audience and what I have to say. But I'm also very intelligent and clever with how I do things, and so I want to make sure that I am respecting that space, respecting that VAR, and ensuring and allowing people to kind of hear what I have to say. And so yeah, there's a whole lot of like dipping, you're just kind of dipping in and out. And yeah, but I think that's there's a reason why we're navigators. We know how to navigate these spaces. Doesn't say it doesn't kind of diffuse how hard it is to navigate. But yeah, that's kind of where I am at the moment. So yeah, I'm kind of just I'm just me. Yeah.
That was a really incredible answer. Thank you. Yeah, I'm like, wow, I feel really lucky to be able to ask you questions. I guess one thing that I want to ask you, Grace, because you're also a teacher and an educator, and you're an English teacher, and you work with kids who are writing poetry, and you're also, I'm imagining, part of the QSA at the school where you work. I guess like what are some of the experiences that you've had with young people sort of exploring their queerness, exploring sexuality through their writing?
Oh, that's such a great question. Firstly, can I just apologize for eating a muesli bar on stage? I'm pregnant and I get hungry very suddenly and need to eat something immediately. So So what is really interesting, yes, I co-run the poetry club with my two friends, Jordan and Vinny, and I also, shout out Jordan, he's here. And I also run the QSA, and there is the queer group, and there is a fair amount of crossover between students who go to those two groups. But what is really interesting is that in the poetry group, there has been, I don't think anything, there might have been some things students were writing that were about their queerness that were so steeped in metaphor that I didn't read that into it. So yeah, we see a lot of things in the poetry that our students are writing, but not necessarily that kind of straightforward. A lot of our students do like to write like very metaphorical stuff. I mean, I do count myself like deeply lucky to be working with the queer students at school, because it's taught me so much about queerness. And like every Wednesday when we meet, I'm just so in awe at how much the world has changed since I was at school. Like I didn't come out until I was 28. The idea of having a queer group at school like wouldn't have existed. And I've had somebody ask me in the last like week or so if I was going to give the baby a gender neutral name. And I was like, no, I think I'll just name the baby whatever I want to, because if they decide something about their gender or they, figure out some stuff about themselves, they're probably going to choose their own name anyway, even if I do give them a gender neutral name, because that's my experience with students at school. Like they might have the most kind of like innocuous or neutral name, but what they really want is a name that stands out or a name that does something different. So yeah, I guess I kind of like witness different things in those two different groups.
I think it was interesting what you mentioned in terms of like not having a group when you were at school. I'm not sure about the rest of you. I definitely didn't have any sort of queer support. Quinn, you didn't either. You might have. You would have had Skittles. Yeah. Shout out Margaret Hugendorn to the... What about you, Dan?
No. We had a condom over a test tube.
Test tube!
Yeah. That that cracked. Yep. Shout out to the physics teacher with the strongest grip in the North Shore.
Yikes. What about you, Ngaio? Did you have any sort of like... Because I think I'm going to just assume that you're the youngest person here. I don't know. Maybe you just look very young. Maybe? I don't know. But whether you had any sort of like queer support when you were at school.
We had a gay-straight alliance in high school, but it was full of straight people. So I didn't hang out there. So yeah, and like in high school, I was still very much like, there's no way I could be queer. Like, don't talk to me about that, you know. So I just wasn't gonna go there or anywhere really. But I think since I've graduated long ago, I think my high school has gotten a lot better with that. And there are actual, like, I think the alliance is still there, and there are like actual queer kids in there. So that's really cool. But yeah, no, it wasn't really what I needed it to be, or what, like, maybe it could have helped me out when I was in high school. But yeah, it wasn't that way when I was there. Yeah.
Because the school that I teach at is a school that I went to for 2 years, so I can see like a direct comparison between what that exact school was like when I was a student, and I'm so grateful for all the strides that the school's made since, you know, in that time.
All right. I am going to have to wrap this up because we want to get to some poetry tonight. Woo! Thank you all so much for your contributions. I'm hoping that with the knowledge that, you know, we, I think as a society, are still working to build queer spaces for ourselves, and Pride is still very much necessary, that tonight can be one of those spaces where we sort of like create safety around talking about queerness, talking about sex, and talking about queer sex. So that is what we're in for. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break, do a little rearrangement, hold tight, and we'll be back with some poems very soon. Thank you very much. You can come sit here. A space has been made for you. Thank you. Thanks for coming back. I hope you enjoyed your little break. So the second part of tonight is a poetry showcase. So all of our poets that were up on stage tonight are going to read some poetry for you. I'm going to start us off with what we in the slam scene call a sorbet poem. It's got nothing to do with sorbet in terms of its subject matter. It's just a palate cleanser for you to get you ready for what's to come. A little preamble for this one. Most of us in New Zealand know the fruit feijoa. There is another word for that, which is pineapple guava. And also important to note is that South Africans use the word guava to refer to a vulva or a vagina. Metaphors. She says she's not a morning person. Spends too many nights riding smoke dreams to the other side of the horizon to really want to wake up with the birds. She says she can't drink coffee because her heart is broken, and the jump starts feel like breakdowns, and when she's alone, there's no roadside assistance. So she takes a rest, sleeps through sunrise, says she's tired of everything, says the mugwort gives her nightmares and the benzos make her clumsy. She fumbles through routines while her mind throws her curveballs, and she's over it. So I wake her with breakfast. Pineapple guava are endless in autumn. The weather is cooling, but the fruits still turn to syrup if you leave them in the heat. We share spoons and scoop the wet flesh like a honeymoon, slurp sweetness till we're dizzy, lick the sugar off each other's chins, and make our way into daytime. She's pledging to a pineapple guava morning ritual while the season's ripeness still falls into her lap. Thank you very much. So our first poet for the evening is Grace Shelley. Welcome to the stage, Grace.
So I am really delighted to be here. I'm going to be reading 4 poems tonight, 3 of my own and 1 by somebody else. I'm going to start with a poem called Avocado Toast with an Absurd Amount of Avocado. I wrote this during a time in my life a couple of years ago when I was feeling very bitter about not being able to afford to buy a house. And also I was having a ton of casual sex. Both of those things have reversed now. So I do own a house, and unfortunately, because of the whole baby situation, I'm not having any casual sex. But other than that, the poem still stands. I want to breakfast every day on avocado toast with an absurd amount of avocado on it. Not half an avocado eked out over 2 slices of 80 GSM white bread, but a whole avocado splayed out thick on thick resilient bread, textural, like not brushing the rose petals off the silk sheets and just fucking right on top of them. I want to yawn my mouth wide and take in everything I deserve. Avocado with her legs spread, the good tea bags, a house deposit, cunts. But every year I earn more money. And the more I earn, the less I can stomach a late-night root in a stranger's house. Once, when I was young, 20 or 19, I ate a macaron, expecting its sweet taste on my tongue. But after spitting it discreetly into one of the Langham's cloth napkins, I looked at the high tea menu. Blue cheese, it said, with olive icing. I should have eaten the whole thing because you're not supposed to like the taste of potions, but boy, do they change you on a fundamental level. The stories tell you not to eat the fairies' food because it binds you to their kingdom. Imagine if I became trapped in the kingdom where people eat olive and blue cheese macarons without blinking. I could eat a whole avocado every day and fuck people who aren't strangers. This next one deals with the intersection between religion and sex, or religion and queerness. I grew up Christian, but I'm no longer Christian. And this poem has a couple of incidents that happened while I was still part of the church. The first one that I'm addressing is when I was about 10 years old, we physically moved the chapel of our church from one property to another property. And a bunch of people from the congregation, we had kind of like a hikoi in the middle of the night behind the church as it moved. And then the other incident that I'm talking about in here is when I was praying over somebody about 6 or 7 years later in that same chapel. It's called My Family Walked Behind the Chapel. My family walked behind the chapel when I was 10 as it made its second exodus, this time from Birkdale to Tramway Road. Its first journey was on logs from Chelsea Sugar Works to Birkdale Road because back then moving buildings on trucks hadn't been invented yet. It felt important to walk in the chapel's wake. Through faith, all things are possible. Just as 6 years later, it felt important that I sat on its hard floor, my hands shimmering on either side of her head, the way they are supposed to when you pray, like a widdy, like an uncontrolled heat. The chapel had broken in neither of its 2 moves, but I thought I would. There was something in her head I didn't understand, and I spoke in tongues or something like them, words I did not intend to speak, but which were called forth from within me. Let her go, I said, let her go, my voice becoming wild like the locusts between John the Baptist's teeth. I'm sure my hands rubbing at the blank air around her skull scared her. Where does that energy go when it's not believed in? It existed once between my hands waving with the Holy Spirit, and it existed in me falling in prayer and my knees not bruising. And then I didn't want my name to be graven on anyone's hands, and I didn't want to feel like I was dying all the time, so I stopped the Holy Spirit from existing. Now I do not feel guilt with every sigh, but my hands still shimmer, and I still feel that something holy is moving through me, just not in a way the Lord would approve of. My whole body is a prayer, and I certainly speak in tongues. When that one was published in a journal last year or the year before, I put it up on my Instagram, and I immediately got a message from my partner's partner, just poly things, saying, is that a cunnilingus reference at the end? And I was like, oh God, I didn't realize it was that obvious. I thought it was metaphorical. I sent this poem to my family. So nobody ever brought it up, so it's great. The next one I'm going to read is from this book by Adrienne Rich, a lesbian poet who died in 2012. This is from a series of poems called 21 Love Poems? And this is from within that series, and it doesn't have a number. It's called The Floating Poem, the Floating Poem Unnumbered. This is the one that I read to somebody in the morning after we'd had sex, and it is my favorite piece of writing about queer sex, and was written in the mid-70s, but is certainly more salacious than anything I've written. Whatever happens with us, your body will haunt mine, tender, delicate. Your lovemaking, like the half-curled frond of the fiddlehead ferns in forests just washed by sun. Your travelled, generous thighs, between which my whole face has come and come. The innocence and wisdom of the place my tongue has found there. The live, insatiate dance of your nipples in my mouth. Your touch on me, firm, protective, searching me out. Your strong tongue and slender fingers reaching where I had been waiting years for you in my rose-wet cave. Whatever happens, this is. Beautiful poem. And now I'm reading the last one is one of my own again. It's called Stand Between Me and the Sun Like an Eclipse. Stand between me and the sun like an eclipse, but in a hot way. Cast your shadow onto my skin like a bee sting on a Venus flytrap. I know you're not supposed to look an eclipse full in the face, but baby, I want to see your stellar corona. Burn my retinas, baby, but sexily like a sunflower tucked behind Medusa's ear. Lean down to adjust my collar like lava-kissing trees as it rubenesques down the mountain's creamy thighs. Baby, you're a savage neon orange wave I want to sink my fingers into, even if it burns them off. I'm making you sound so dangerous, but you're not. Or you are, but only in the sense that you've cracked my whole life open, baby, like squeezing a walnut between two metal teeth and then the handle slipping and giving you a blood blister and curling up on your grandma's knee and saying it's the worst Christmas ever until she takes the walnut in her sturdy hands and cracks it for you. Only as dangerous as that. You can crack my life apart like a nut anytime you like, baby. But in a good way, don't get me wrong, in a hot way. Thank you.
Far out, that was sick. Oh man, I really like that poem that you shared that was from the 70s as well. Whew. Thanks for putting the aircon on earlier. Our next poet tonight is Ngaio. Come on up. Fresh.
Kia ora. So this is my first sex poem. It's short and shrouded in mystery and metaphor and imagery because I'm very shy and this is my first thing like this. So, cool. Okay. It doesn't have a title, but I'll title it now. It's called Hecatome. In winter is when I would say being a hecatome makes the most sense. Everyone is inside, and so are you. You can bleed, debone, sacrifice the 100 parts of yourself in the privacy of your own home. I am so good at swelling. Another year as awful. The pieces left for the people after the priests have been fed. This is my millionth time as a fine sheen of tallow shining across the teeth. Like a good boy, I am always ready to be spread over anything. In my first attempt at writing about sex, I start with propitiation, wholesale, images that mean my room is cold, I am alone but still pumping with blood. While the other animals tense up, I am begging to be cut into early. It is not the right time to sacrifice dogs, so good thing I am a wolf. No matter the season, many gods will still take a savage. The bulls sit nervous in garlands, and I am rushing head first for the altar. The Olympic Games used to be a religious ceremony. When the men wrestled, slipped leathered heel on marble hall, rested head against Apollo thin waist right before crushing them, it was for Olympus. What I am trying to say is that I want the same. Split me open like you would for a god. Thank you.
Yeah, damn, what a finish. Woo! Well. Thank you so much. Where are you? Thank you so much. What an incredible first queer sex poem. Let's give it up again for Ngaio. All right, Josh, you're up. We need to do a quick rearrangement, and then we're ready.
Thank you. Yo, what's up, y'all? I've got one kind of long poem to read that's gonna be like about 10 minutes, so get comfy. I'm gonna get comfy too, okay? But yeah, just be me in the space, yo. I've always felt alone for as long as I can remember. Whether it was because I was an only child until 16, born to the song, "You to me are everything," it seems I had inherited everything, required to feel alone. Whether it was because I was poor, because I was brown, because I was queer, I can't quite put my finger on which index it fits in anymore. I'm perplexed, and I have been for a while. Because life always felt mundane, like a magic was missing. One that I only saw in fairy tales, even though I ironically developed a foot fetish, these slippers weren't made of glass. These slippers were made of smoke. Sex soaked in dark magic, where instead of Prince Charmings, I found pigs and poppers. Perpetually perplexed, especially since genetically my polysexuality was already shrouded as it was, clouded as it was, a bang in the sky as it was, a part in the lungy as it was, when missionaries invaded our islands and told us how it should be, labeling our ancient queer brown magic as heresy, which too would lead to our own people calling us the curse. Where we went from being brave warriors of valor to abominations. They took the mana from our very being. They just could not comprehend our Oceanian orgasmic magic. This Polynesian Pacific Pacifica pussy penis power, this relational understanding of gender and sexualities as fluid as the waters that lap on our shores. As soaked as the mop when mopping your floors. You have already taken so much away from us. Give us our sex back. our life energy, our breath of life energy, our ha energy, our sexuality, our magic. Give us back our magic. Abracadabra, alakazam, and give our cousins back their land. Moon, prison, power, make up bubbles, blossom, and buttercup. Give back what was taken, give back what was lost. Azarath, Metreon, Zenthos. I guess maybe that's why I felt so alone. Because I have and have always felt this burning magic within me, this binary blitzing energy, I mean energies, femininity, masculinity, never limiting, always in between. Va, do you know how beautiful you are? My brown queer survivors, to know ourselves, we need not go very far. And that unsettling, unravel the settler feeling you feel. I feel it too. This unsettling feeling, this spider tingling. I thought it would stop when I fought the first time with my first foul brown brother, but there seems to be others, other green gremlins on this yellow brick road, other things I feel in the marrow of my bones like codes. Have you been to Dorothy's place? Do you want to know what my first speech was in high school? I was 13 years old, year 9. It was my first year at Mount Roskill Grammar School. And in front of 120 students and all the English teachers, my speech was about sex. I'm thinking about it. You're thinking about it, and we should all start talking about it. With my GHD straightened hair that swept across my forehead, when you got a speech competition at 7 and the black parade at 8, when you didn't pass the second round, but you still kind of ate, when my speeches feel more than just speeches, but cries that run deep beyond me, where this loneliness I feel isn't because I am lonely, where these spells cast into the abyss aren't because I am alone. No, this loneliness is the loneliness of our islands, where I can see our sea of islands as clear as day. But out here, D-Lo poly boy from the hood still struggling with the term gay, where our churches are immaculate while our magic decays. The bird song I sing on my heart today is an invitation to time travel with me. In and through the vow. In and through space and time itself, in and through the Vafetu, etched into skin and into time. Did you know that we see more stars in the southern hemisphere? It's just too bad my people are covered in shame and fear when it comes to our own song of sex. Instead, brown queerness sometimes looks like faceless profiles. Toxic masculinity is a scapegoat personality. Gee, what's your snap? I don't want to get snapped. And so the face of brown queer sex becomes faceless. And instead of thriving queer brown descendants of our ancestors, we just become ghosts. Well, it's a good thing I sleep with my mirrors uncovered, because I'm not afraid to uncover the truth. I'm not afraid of ghosts. In fact, they talk to me the most. I'm not afraid of death. I'm not afraid of life. I'm fearless because it runs in my DNA. And speaking of DNA, I was wondering, can we just have a moment to address brown queer loss? Can we just have a moment to heal? Can we just have some time and space to reconnect to our stars? Can we just have some island time to mourn the erasure of ourselves? Can we just have some time to ourselves? Can we just have some time with ourselves and our queer ancestors? Can we just have some time to face the rising ocean and breathe in the salty sweat that covers our bodies when we have sex? Can we just go back to the beginning when you to me were everything? Back to sex life energy. Can we just make some time to remember ourselves, surrender ourselves? Do you remember? Do you remember looking into my eyes while the palm trees swayed behind me? The sound of waves caressing Samoan sandy shores. In my fale, there are no doors. In this space, you are safe. In this space, you are special, you are sacred, you are chosen, you are tapu, the closest thing we have to Tangaloa, who too is beyond binary. Look around, in my fale, there are no doors. There are no closets. This ancient space is open. This ancient space is free. This is how it's supposed to be. Do you remember when our sex was free? when we were two brown queer bodies folding over each other, like the waves that look our va'a. Because when we ride waves together, we read the stars and we know exactly where we are going. Baby brown queer Pacific sex is coming more times than constellations. I can already see you rising, supernova after supernova, feeling life energy, intergenerationally, intergalactically, interstellar, kissing each other until the sun goes down, giving that amnesia, mystic, nostalgic sound. When we have sex, we time travel, conjuring ancient sexual liberation. Our tupuna have been waiting to see us return to ourselves. Return to our ways of being one with the source of being, with our sex, with our magic. I cannot wait for that day where our amnesia is washed away and we're finally back to island time, where life is as slow as our sex and our village embraces us, where there are no doors to open because we already know we belong, where we're all chanting ancient songs, the sweetest song that I could sing, oh baby. And as we sing our bird song, calling across the skies, I can feel this loneliness drift with the nimbus, drifting like the ocean current we draw with sticks. So too do I draw you closer to your ancient self. You see, this is no fairy tale. This is a memory. Do you remember?
Palisatawa, a name of one of our highest chiefs in Samoa, a name that was bestowed to Joshua Yosefu. A cultural thanks for expressing and supporting our people here. Wapa'apetai, wapa'apetai, wamaliye matae va'ai, watasilava oe, watasilava oe, ilo umei pa'amoe moe. Malo.
Thank you.
Let's give another hand for Joshua. That was so incredible. Thank you, Joshua. That was really good. That was incredible. Thank you. Yeah, wow. I don't really want to say anything about that because I have nothing to add. It was incredible. Thank you so much. Our next poet tonight is Quinn. Where are they? Oh, there you are, right there. Yeah, welcome to the stage, Quinn.
Well, fuck, I have to follow that. So I'm so sorry. This lighting, though, is very sexy. It's very, very sexy lighting. All right, well, I'm just beside myself. I'm trying to collect myself after that. That was incredible. I was very lucky, actually, to see Josh's show, Odd Daphne. I don't know if anyone else in the room got to see that, but it was incredible. Let me just pull up the first one. So this first one, and pretty much all of my poems are about my girlfriend who's in the audience, baby. So yeah, enjoy this embarrassment. I love you. Oh, I should probably preface the first half of this is about my ex, but the good part of it is about her. Just to be clear. It's called Ass and Assonance. Loving you lacked luster, left me in a rut, a sucker punch to my sucked-in size 18 gut. I suck on Sour Patch Kids for a snack in between lunch. I guess this year my fears have really packed a punch, line hanging out my clothes while I work on my prose. I cut roses in the garden, but I keep my guard up. Pruned you like a posy, you no longer get to know me. Never scissored you, so I had to use my shears. Wicked weeds waiting to withdraw from my lawn. Got tired of your tyranny. You're a terrible yawn. Compressed and depressed, ready for the beyond. Practically pushing up daisies, praying for you to be gone. Your tears only ever watered you. Your soil soaked from sensitivity and the inability to shoulder your share of responsibility, suddenly so dry when it came to me. A bee incapable of pollinating. The nectar never left your noble wings. A peasant preposterously posing as a queen. See, but she's secure, and I'm attached. For once not awaiting animosity attacks, actually allowing affection acquire assent. Restricted renovations require resource consents. Conserving conversations. Here's the version that's condensed. You were a fucking mess. Now, let me skip ahead to me in bed with someone else undressed. Lately, puckering up my two lips to another girl's lips for a chapstick or a matte gloss kiss, finishing first to finally fall asleep before her, stirred the sheets in her sleep to get a sip of water. I want to be the person that makes her thirsty in the night, tackling terrors, terrorizing through her dreams, distracting demons, derailing her peace. I've spent this year on top and underneath, each sweaty, sexy session a sonnet to me. She's got gracious gratitude for my anxious attitude, switching positions from longitude to latitude. I wait with wide eyes for the wax to burn my thighs, a bratty bottom begging for bruises, no surprise. She's definitely dominating, demonstrating power. I'm salivating over each sensation by the hour, respectfully requesting my remarkable release like, can I come now, please? Relying on red handprints for both sets of cheeks. I guess when you spend so much time fucking, you forget how much the world is sucking. She's asking me what assonance is, so I ask her to arch her back, and I eat her ass until her arms give. Thank you. This next one is partially inspired by my new favorite movie, and if you know, you know. I have given you the wrong impression. When I undressed out of that sundress and you rested your head upon my chest, you said, you just want me for my body. And my body ran cold because that's simply not so. So I must have been too hungry with my hands, always trying to fill them to feel you. And I'll tell you the truth, I do love your body. It is the home in which you reside, so I'm beside myself while I'm beside you, and I lay down the book on the bedside table on the right-hand side, and I sigh. I look you in the eyes, and I remind you that it is I that puts eye drops in your eyes for you at night because you have allergies. And I remind you that the book on the table by our bedside is one I've been reading to you each night because the different voices I do for each character brings you delight. And when we're eating, I always offer you a bite of mine because you love to share food, but I never did until I was with you. And if I'm feeling nice, I scoop the cat poop, but it's only your job usually because my back ain't what it used to be. I used to take my body so seriously, my tattoos had to have meaning. Sometimes to my body, I'm just mean without the ing, but when it comes to your body, I want to tell everybody that it is a bagel with everything seasoning and that I want you everywhere all at once. Yeah, I'm whipped. I'm obsessed with her. She knows it. It's not good for her ego. His next one is called Carnivorous Clits. People compare femininity to flowers, bunches of bouquets waiting between legs to be devoured, as if clits are carnations and not carnivores. Have you ever been to a carnival before? You may think a vulva is a fun house, but if you weren't invited by us, you should get out. I spit my poetry into your tea, stirring rotationally, waiting for you to sink, so I can sink my teeth in to strength I use to win my girl a prize. My most prized possessions are her size when I'm inside, possessing her with no strings, attached first and foremost emotionally, flossing feelings like candy, dreams of sugar spun, spinning around in strawberries and her scream dreams, throwing fortunes like darts in the dark, mirroring each other until we forget who we are. The tether is a tightrope we tiptoe together. Cake stands with funnels feed our frenzy with pleasure. Normally I can't stand cake, but hers is the best ever. Don't need to be the fairest of them all if I get to ride by her side in a Ferris wheel so tall. Maybe one day I'll toss her a ring, and if she says yes, you'll hear this fat lady sing. Thank you. And also just really huge thank you to Sarah and Dan for organizing this. Like, clap for them, please. Like, this is, thank you. Thanks to Movespace. I've got one last one for you, and it's called Pollution and Penetration. Discarded at the bottom of our laundry hamper is a black silicone strap-on dildo. We've only really used it about 3 times, though, pressured not by my partner, but by expectations of what queer sex should be. I thought she'd like sex more if she got to absolutely rail me. I used to be in a group of queer friends, you see, and they were all hyped up about fucking their partners in the style of doggy, and it's a queer eats queer world, and what's hot and what's not. Like the undercuts, the eyebrow slit, bottom switches and tops. I find myself taking tips from Gen Z on TikTok. I really don't want this era of my life to be a flop, but sometimes I find queer sex kind of sus. I just want love like Bill and Frank in The Last of Us. Linger longer in life and lust gets left in the dust. You clear the cobwebs only when the mood strikes. If your mood and their mood is just right, because most of the time you're building blocks of foundation molded from boredom. You don't have to break molds. You can absorb them. My partner is great at shock absorption. She takes the brunt of all my damages and distortions, practices kintsugi, paints my pieces with gold, and repairs what was broken. She would take no credit in the cure, pointing to me, saying it was all her. Healing hurts, handed out by other hands. She waters my garden without making demands. At night, before we sleep, she tells me that she'll miss me. And it's then when I see any recent resentment I might have been keeping gets softly blown away under her gentle breathing. Her practicality provides me with perspective. Consent is about choice, and penetration is an elective. I'm pointing this out because my point is how we as a collective have decided that we can make our own rules now. Please don't feel peer pressured into liking penetration. You're perfectly allowed your own preferences and persuasions. Gentle reminder that boredom often equals safety. Trust in that theory, and maybe you'll thank me. Fireworks are fun while they last, but they fade and fizzle out fast, leaving only pollution behind and being stuck in traffic after midnight. Thank you.
Quinn's poetry is always so sick. Honestly, wish I had rhymes like you. It's just incredible. Thank you so much. All right, our last poet, our last poet for tonight is our good friend Dan Goodwin. Needs no introduction. Come on up.
We were chatting about how to work a microphone stand earlier, and my advice, my contribution to the thing was do a dick joke. Just do this. There we go. I didn't say it was a good contribution, but I've just got 2 poems for you. I was chatting with Josh and Ngaio earlier about something that I think I've chatted with you before as well, this thing of queer people writing about queer sex often, and I've had it a whole bunch, this kind of assumption of explicitness, or the idea of doing that kind of thing for shock factor, or some implication that when you write about sex, you're being blunt and explicit, and you lose the ability to read a room or read nuance, or you forego some kind of conversation with the audience, which is simply not true. I think queer people have such a skill in being able to read a room before they enter into it. I think that's one of the things we're best at, for better or worse. But yeah, 2 poems. This is a new one, and then I have an old one as well. I write about queer sex, and I tell myself I am not just writing about sex, that sex is never just about sex. I write about queer sex, and I worry I am being narcissistic, centering myself in a way that feels presumptuous. I write about queer sex and tell people the reason is education, which it is. I write about queer sex and realizing I am starting every line with a disclaimer, not just for existence, but the way my senses extend out into the world, as if sight, sound, taste, and touch were sins. Realize I have a straight voice in my head saying, how dare you perceive us? Do you know how uncomfortable that is? Then I realize that voice is not a straight voice. So I stop. Leave my laptop. Spend time with queer friends. Come home. Continue. I write about queer sex and pray that I could be E.T. riding in the basket of your childhood, bike across the moon, and no matter how alien I might be, you will always see the brightest part. I will always guide you home. I write about queer sex and will the hurricane from Oz to surround us as we dance in the barn. Hay becomes home as Dorothy goes on her adventure. Everyone's so concerned about the unnatural disaster. They can't see the way your hair blows perfectly across your forehead. I write about queer sex, and rarely do I tell anyone the people are fictional. I have never had a partner and don't know if I ever could. But hey, aren't those stories wild? Aren't those dreams I have vivid? Don't you think if being queer was unnatural, I wouldn't be able to start from scratch so well? I write about queer sex and plant drafts of poetry underneath flower beds in a public garden. So if I never make it to writing an honest love poem, at least they will grow something public, colorful. Something that will survive without me having to do anything except exist in the beginning. A chance to rewrite a creation myth with queers in it in some small way. Strangers will stroll through and say, wow, these are some great flowers. I write about queer sex, and sometimes the only goal is to transform a story into something so ridiculous, so absurd that people laugh and say I am being explicit, when actually all I am doing is making sure these characters know nothing but pleasure. I write about queer sex, and sometimes people call it pornography. But the first genres to ever house us were horror and pornography, so then let it be pornography where the gay boy comes home alive, where the gay boy is not tied to a fence in Wyoming and taught about in high school, when the queer boy is not gunned down in a Chicago nightclub or set on fire in Glasgow. I write about queer sex, and the inspiration is always how long it took me to stop shaking on our first date. I write about queer sex, and every time a straight person makes a homophobic comment, I mark my number on the wall of another club room, bathroom cubicle. Call for a gay time. Every so often my mobile rings. I pick up but do not speak. Just listen to the sound of another queer person saying hello over and over. Proof I am desired somewhere for something unseen and intangible, inherent and beautiful. I write about queer sex because in some way I believe all queer people go through this. I have to believe other people go through this, or else I have nothing but these poems about longing, about a decision to shout a name into the darkness and pray. I write because I need to. I need to believe someone will shout back at me. Yeah, no, someone asked me, did someone ask me? I don't know, people in general, it's like sometimes the question is thrown my way. So that was a genuine attempt to try and answer why write about queer sex for them and myself in kind of a serious way. This is a less serious response to that question of like why write about queer sex that I wrote for, I was about to say a friend, for a man that I knew in Thirsty Dog, for those who know Thirsty Dog. Yeah. It's called Fuck Me From the Grave and Be Original for once. A well-intentioned friend said recently, you know, you won't be able to talk about sex in your poems forever. Eventually, it will become crass. He is not wrong. There's a whole lot of crass in my poems and a hole in my crass the size of a sewer grate, which is great for getting in cock. Eventually, all this sex will become unacceptable. Well, until then, my poet brand is filthy bottom whore, like apple bottom jeans with a hole in the back, or fat bottom girl with a fanny pack filled with another hole. Wow, shocker. Eventually, you will start to come across like, oh, you know. He says this with the same anxiety my grandmother had when she thanks me for not being one of those gays. You know, the ones that look just like you and me and have no discernible features distinct from any other human being except maybe the trail of semen flowing from their asshole. Like a snail who enjoys a brisk walk. There's more to being gay than having sex with men, sure, but sex with men is at least like 60% of the gig. 69 on a good day. Also, you don't get to decide what our pride means. Sexual liberation isn't sexy when you're in your 60s, but when you're queer, your 60s is your 30s, except why are we so obsessed with stealing years from queer people still? I am 29, and I can hear the clock counting down towards gay death, this notion that queer lives stop being fun and exciting at 30. I am non-binary, but that still hasn't stopped the countdown of being male-coded my whole life. I think about my friend, who is almost a 60-year-old straight man. I wonder how much of the sexual shame is his. I wonder how much of it I might inherit still. How much of it is homophobia? How much of it is puritanical prudishness? How much of it is sex being indivisible from profit in a capitalist-based society where even acts deemed purely for pleasure can be branded, given value, and therefore bought and sold? That is a different poem. I am so proud of the sex that I have. Fuck me, or fuck off. I can make my partner's anus chime as if you were standing inside the bells of the Notre Dame. I can wear him down like Notre Dame after the fire. Hashtag don't build it back. When I sleep, I stick my ass cheeks out of the sheets in case he feels up for a midnight snack. When we take baths together, I pretend to be a submarine and stick my penis just above the surface. I make him laugh. Because sex can be funny. You are sticking your bodies together so well that God is suing Lego for copyright. Writing a poem about queer sex in full detail is political. For any assault survivor, sex is political. For any queer person, sex is political. It will still be so when I am 60 and 70 and 80. And when I am dead, it will be remarkable if I am still writing. But I hope that some queer kid reads me and thinks, maybe I don't have to figure out all this straight away. If I could tell my 16-year-old self anything, it would be to take your time. Pride will come when it's meant to. Will grow like primrose in the Scottish winter. So when I die, bury me with my ass cheeks sticking just above the ground. My epitaph reading, well loved. But better used.
I'm keeping Dan up here with me. That's us for tonight. Thank you all so much for coming. Our poets tonight were incredible. Thank you so much, Grace, Ngaio, Josh, Quinn, and Dan. Thank you so much for helping organize tonight. It was incredible. I couldn't have done it without you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And can I just get one massive round of applause for the driving force behind all of this? Your host, Sazok, Sarah Craig, Poetry Snaps.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Let's turn on house lights.